Game on, everybody, and welcome to another video. And in today's video we are going to be discussing the top 5 cards per ink in Shimmering Skies. First and foremost, though, I do want to give a special shout out to all my supporters, such as my Patreon subscribers. Your contribution allows me to consistently make videos, and I just also wanted to say thank you to everybody who also leaves a comment, like, and subscribes, because the engagement really helps my channel grow. I plan on making these kinds of videos for every set, and if you guys plan on buying any cards, please consider using my TCG player affiliate link in the description box below. All these small interactions really go a long way, so I just want to say thank you very much. Moving on, we're going to go ahead and talk about Amber. So first up, we have the Queen Sensor Core. I quite like this card. It has the potential to give Princess and Queens just passive lore, and those are very heavily populated keywords. The only con that I can maybe think of, and I like to also have a pro and con for each card displayed, but for a con, it does add a potential top card from your deck, but it may be too expensive. I'm not quite too sure. We'll have to play test with it more, but I quite like this card. For the second card, I put Revive as an action. 5 costs. You get to play a character of 5 costs or less from your discard for free. So it allows you to just replay a character from your discard and utilize its on-play effects. But this card definitely is not an ideal card you want to open, so you're always going to be hard mulliganing. So try to come up with a downside for this one, but I like this one as well. I'm just a big fan of Amber overall. But one card I'm really excited for is Alana Dale. This is basically a inkable Sleepy's Flute on legs, and best case scenario, whenever you do play a song and you quest with it, you'll be gaining at least 3 lore, and its effect also stacks. The only thing I can really think about negatively for this card is that it is below average in strength and willpower stat lines for its cost. And ultimately you wouldn't really be using it for singing, so maybe it now becomes like your designated singer, but you really kind of want to get that 2 lore off of it and then hard play those songs, in my opinion anyways, with this card. Up next for Amber, we have Daisy Duck, the Donald's Date. And this card is a fantastic card for aggro, and it's overly statted even though it's uninkable. The only downside that with this card I can consider is that yeah, whenever you quest with this card, your opponent reveals the top card from their deck, and if it's a character, they add the card, so they're adding cards to their hand. But realistically, if they're looking at the top and it's finally the answer card that they were looking for to try to remove it, like in Along Came Zeus or something of that nature, or like a Let It Go, this would basically put it to the very bottom of the deck, and then now your opponent is out one of those resources to basically remove this card. So aggro decks seem to be pretty viable for this set. And then the last Amber card that I wanted to put up for the top 5 is Prince Naveen, Ukulele Player, and this is a free 6 cost singer or less when he is played, and has the Singer 6 ability. He is uninkable. I was kind of stretching with this one. I don't really necessarily see inkable as a negative. You guys can go ahead and see that I'm actually a big believer that you can actually play more uninkable cards in your deck. So if you're interested in stuff like that, you can go ahead and check my channel about how many uninkable cards you can play in a deck. But anyways, moving on with this, it's always just a great card and has upward potential. I'm just a really big fan of Steel Song, but anytime like they print more songs, we can always consider playing this card, and then it also does the ability to play a card for free. So I like this a lot. It's definitely going to see play. But we're going to go ahead and now move over to Amethyst. Amethyst for my card, the first one I want to talk about was Cogsworth, Illuminary Watchman. This is a 1-drop, 1/1 quest for 1, but it does have the ability to, when you play this character, chosen character gains Rush. So not really necessarily the best turn 1 card you want to play, but any kind of follow-up, especially with the Madame Mim and Merlin packages, you can play this on top of that. And as a rabbit, it's a cheap white rabbit's pocket watch on legs. So bounce will definitely get the best utilization out of cards like this. It is weakly statted, and like I said, not the ideal turn 1 play, but I still think this could see some play. And then for our next Amethyst card I wanted to talk about was Magica Dispel, the Cruel Sorceress. And during your opponent's turn, if an effect would cause you to discard 1 or more cards in your hand, you don't discard. So it's one of those floodgate effects. This one is specifically for discard, and it seems like this set has a lot of potential floodgates. And for people who don't know, floodgates are just basically cards that prevent actions from occurring that your opponents are trying to do. And the only con that I can really think of is that the 4-drop Amethyst slot is very like heavily populated. Think of Madam Fox. Like, would you want to try to fit this in by trying to... Would you have rather played this card over Madam Fox? I think this card is definitely more of a techable option, especially because it's inkable. So it's maybe a card that we should consider, especially if there's heavy discard around or if Emerald is going around. Hopefully there's less of that in this set than the last one, but I mean, overall I think this is a pretty cool card as well. And then another 4-drop inkable card in Amethyst, we have Madam Elephant, and another Madam bounce card, but serves more as a defensive option. And what I mean by that is that it's going to take a lot to kind of take this out, and it can fairly trade well with a 3 strength stat line. So we're going to be kind of... your opponents are going to have to be forced to crash into this, or you're going to have to basically give an answer to this. And if you don't end up dealing with this card, you will be basically experiencing an additional 2 damage counters on the start of your opponent's turn. So it's like 1 shot or nothing. And then if you don't, 2 damage is now moved over from this character to an opposing character, and then it gets bounced back, and then it's basically full health again. So very interesting. I can see this as an interesting tech card if we're trying to play more bounce options that maybe we just need to recycle our own play effects. And for another Amethyst card I like is this the Library, a gift for Belle, a location card, and it has 1 less cost than Queen's Castle for 1 less lore, but you also gain 1 more willpower. It also seems that if this is more for when you're planning on using a character and it's going to be like sacked or used for a challenge. So at the start of your turn, or when you're planning on being the aggressor, you can move characters to the library, and if they're going to be traded in a challenge, you're going to knock out your opponent's cards, and then you'll go +1 off those interactions. And then when it's your, like, before you pass turn to your opponent, like for the Queen's Castle, like basically cards you want to stay alive for, or you think is going to be alive on your following turn, you have them in the Queen's Castle. But cards that you're going to try to trade for with, you'll put them in the library and then kind of get rid of them in that way. The only con I can think about is that probably the Queen Castle is better. I know it's kind of like comparative to say something like that, but it's like you probably would, like, maybe in a location heavy deck you would play both, but maybe there's now a split that you would consider maybe a 3 Queen's Castle 2 library, maybe, I don't know. But I feel kind of weird sometimes not playing a full play set of the Queen's Castle, because that card is just amazingly overly statted and great card overall. And then I do believe this is my last Amethyst card, so I really like this card, what it provides for Amethyst. It provides amazing tempo that feels like it has a lot of upwards combo potential. It is only 2 strength, but it has a great willpower stat. So with keywords such as rush and evasive, and on play, it has the ability to exert a chosen opposing character. This just sounds amazing. Just a great card overall. I love this kind of card design. And then moving on to Emerald now. So I wanted to highlight a Robin Hood Timely Contestant, and this is the only 9-drop kind of card that I wanted to talk about, because I think this is probably the best one, or at least the most easiest one to not only put into play, but it also has the keyword ward, which makes it much more so based off my note here, potentially the best cost reduction type card in the set, just because it has ward, and it also quests for 4 and it has a 6/6 stat line. So with all the damage spread across all your opponents, so if you end up having 4 damage down, the cost reduction is 4, so you can play this as a 5/6/6 that quests for 4. That's overly statted, and the only thing I can think of is that it's technically a build around card that you would need to try to like maximize this kind of card, but that kind of seems what the new Emerald identity is, and you're going to be kind of forced to play with steel, which is fine. That's a great color combo. But moving on, we're going to go ahead and talk about now the Prince John's Mirror item. And when I saw this card, it's clearly going to be the replacement for Bucky post errata. But this is very similar to a card that exists also in like other trading card games. I believe Pokemon has one where at the end of your turn, but this is a permanent, it stays on the board, and it's always going to like hand choke your opponent down to 3 cards in hand. So they're going to have to try to always be like favorably discarding their hand in the sense, or maximizing their ink resource, putting bodies on board. But because it's at the end of the turn, there's always that chance that your opponent could maybe find an answer. I think with a lot of items coming into the meta that are pretty viable, especially at the 3-drop slot, I think Benja is probably going to come back more favorably in the meta. And it looks like all color combinations now have decent item removal through different capacities that we'll probably talk through about this. If not, I'll probably make an update video on like different kinds of cards removal for our sites. But anyways, moving on, I really like this card as well. You're welcome. It's an action song. 4 costs. Shuffle chosen character item or location into the player's deck. That players draw 2 cards. So great as a removal option for Emerald. It's also an inkable song. Love to see that. And it doubles as a potential draw 2 for your card. So if you want to basically, when a card is removed from play, you can target that card, get its own, like a rabbit. I don't necessarily know if you would use it for that, but you could, such as like Rabbit could sing, Merlin Rabbit could sing, You're Welcome, target itself, puts it back into the deck, Rabbit draws a card. This also now lets you draw another card, so you just sung this card for a 3. That's pretty interesting to do, pretty neat anyways. So the draw 2 sounds like a downside as well, but it could combo with a mill strategy. So this is going to be a great card. I love this kind of card design as well. And then a card I also wanted to bring up was Hypnotic Deduction. It says draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand to the top of your deck in any order. So this is, like I said, draw 3 and put any 2 from your hand to the top of the deck. The only con I can really kind of bring up for these is that it's not a song, which is fine. And then Lorcana needs much more shuffling effects. So then that way you can really help hand sculpt or sculpt the top of your deck, or sculpt your hand, and then put stuff that you don't really necessarily want to see back into the deck. And then you're still going to be drawing those cards off the top. So hopefully maybe in the future we have ways to shuffle the deck better. There's not really too many cards that shuffle the deck. And then we're going to talk about Mother Gothel, Unwavering Schemer. She's a 6 inkable, 4/6, quest for 2, shift 4. And when you play this character, each opponent chooses one of their characters and returns it to their hand. So that's a Mother Knows Best, I believe. Really cool stuff. And I would like to kind of borderline call it an inkable Lady Tremaine. And all I'm going to say is that it doesn't remove a card from play though. Which does allow opponents to recycle on play effects. So like if this gets played on me and I have an aerial on board, I'll just bounce the aerial. Sure, I lose like the tempo, but I'm gonna get the on play effect. So that feels like a win-win for me. But just as an idea, I think this is a pretty solid card as well. Moving on to Ruby now. Truthfully, there wasn't too many Ruby cards that I like. I'm also not necessarily a Ruby player. Ruby's a great card, color combination to be paired with, but the color combinations or decks that I like to play with, I don't really like to include Ruby. Anyways, sorry with the tangent, but I think this is a decent card that pairs super well with what Ruby already has going with them, with Rush and Reckless. And like worst case scenario, it's an inkable card. It just seems a little too situational, but definitely in theme with Ruby. So that's cool. That's cool, right? Another card I want to talk about is Glimmer versus Glimmer. It's a 4-cost action that banish chosen character of yours to banish chosen character. So unfortunately it does not get around ward, but it is what it is. Could be used to combo with cards that get effects when banished. And overall, this is kind of negative card advantage, but in some situations, if you pair it well with a combo, it could be a net positive. Great artwork, though. I love that one. And then another card I want to talk about is Robin Hood Sharpshooter, 4 cost uninkable, 1/4 quest for 2. And it says, whenever this character quests, you can look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may reveal an action with cost 6 or less, play for free, put the rest in your discard. So this has the potential for a free action of cost 6 or less. And stuff like that, when it says play a card for free, shouldn't be ignored. I'm not so sure what deck you would play this in. My first initial assumption is Ruby Amber, and not so much the Mufasa list, because then, well, now you're going to be playing some actions. But I really quite like Amber Ruby songs. That's the closest I've ever personally gotten to playing a Ruby deck, and it can just be pretty neat to kind of set something up like this. The only problem is that it requires you to quest, and it's not an on-play effect, so it could be slow. I don't know. Somebody let me know in the comments down below what you guys think about this. But one card I do like from this set is the Vanellope von Schweetz Random Roster Racer. It's a 4 uninkable 3/3. Has rush, and when the turn it's played, when you play this character, she gains evasive. So I like this because it kind of gives that great surprise factor. Con, it's uninkable, but it's really decently statted, and like the first initial play, you'll be wanting to maybe you will challenge with it. It will likely survive in those trades, and then any turn afterwards, you're just going to be questing with it. And worst case scenario, you're just going to be like using it as a body to knock out something else. So it could potentially go 2 for 1, which is really cool. But most of the time, how I like to think about it is like it's like a Snee that isn't inkable, but it has rush, and it comes a turn later, which is pretty cool. And then Ruby, I'm going to talk about this 6-drop inkable Maximus, and its effect says a reward worthy of a king. This is a translation. At the end of your turn, if one of your characters has 5 strength or more, gain 2, and if your character has 10 strength or more, gain 5 lore instead. It quests for 2. It has a 3 strength, 5 willpower, and this feels like it already just combos with the Flynn and Sisu cards from set 4, and could push support cards to be more viable, because based off like my understanding is that support falls off at the end of the turn, but this basically checks in the bag before the turn ends. So if you have multiple characters with support, you boosted that one character to 10. This then checks to see that a character has a strength of 10 or more, and then this gains you the 5 at the end of your turn. So that's kind of neat. If that works out, let me know in the comments section below as well if I'm wrong about this. And another con about this is that it seems kind of late. It's a very high cost. So I like it though. I think it's a cool build around card. And we're gonna move on to Sapphire. Admittedly, like this card is probably should be higher on my list, but there's so many good Sapphire cards. So let's go ahead and just talk about the ones I have listed here. And so we have Chicha, Dedicated Mother. She has support, 2/1, 2 strength, 1 willpower, 2 uninkable, quest for 1. During your turn, when you put a card into your inkwell, if it was the second card you've put into your inkwell this turn, you may draw a card. Fantastic. I love this. So extra draw for ramping, and multiple copies should stack. So if you end up having multiples, it's not even like super necessary, but just something to consider. But most of the inking comes from hand with Fishbone Quill, and you'll be able to selectively choose what you're inking. The only con I can really kind of come up with is that it's under average with the stat line, and it's uninkable. But this is a great card because you're going to be basically inking an extra card with Fishbone Quill every turn, and then because you did that, you're going to draw a card, so it kind of replaces that card. Cool. And it really helps you feel like you can make better choices with inking some cards, because you'll likely maybe draw into another copy of a card that you're just inking away. Just some like basic theory that I had with this card so far. So another Sapphire card I wanted to talk about, I'm sure everybody's talking about this, is this 8 cost uninkable Mufasa, Ruler of the Pride Rock, a 4 strength, 9 willpower, and it has the ability of Delicate Balance. When you play this character, exert all cards in your inkwell, then return 2 cards at random from your inkwell to your hand, and everything the light touches. Whenever this character quests, ready all cards in your inkwell, and it has 4 lore. So it is thematic in color. It's thematic in color and is a build around card. It is also a heavy ramp that becomes a pseudo. If you like heavy ramp, it becomes a pseudo +2. And the following turn, it can create a dramatic tempo swing. So this is probably more of a game finisher, not so much like a. If you're getting value of this card, like you're questing or you're using all your ink, you're questing, reset all your ink. If you're not winning that turn or like the following turn, like if you end up doing this effect twice, you're win. It's basically kind of win more at that point. I haven't really been able to test too deeply into this, but based off of like what I can think of, because like you'll be getting this card out if you do it efficiently by turn 4 or 5, but a lot of stuff has to kind of go right in order to hit that mark. But you just have to turbo into this card if you really want to really get some play into this card. But really interesting card. I do like this a lot. I was trying to figure out some different combo lines to kind of efficiently bring this out. I'm not too sure how many copies I would play of this card, but at the minimum, or at the maximum, probably 3, if I had to guess, is top end. It contests with like Tamatoa, but this is more like ramp focus instead of item focus. So neat. Maybe you play both. Another cool card is this Merlin Intellectual Visionary. 6 drop uninkable, 3 strength, 7 willpower, shift 5. And in order to get this effect, you must shift, because it says when you play this character, if you use shift to play him, you may search your deck for any card. Put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. Awesome. First true tutor style card. In my last video, I said a different card was a tutor, but this is now actually the first true tutor. A card that allows you to, what is a tutor? A card that allows a player to search their deck for any card they desire. The cons that I can think about is that it does require you to shift, and shift 1 is inherently a -1 in card advantage, but at least you can break even to a positive, like you can break even to net a positive return if the card you're searching is like a plus in different ways. So very cool card. Unfortunately, there isn't that many great shift targets. I think there's one from set 3 that Merlin exists in. He's like an inkable card with like 3-4 stat lines. I think that's better than the one that gives like the resist to cards with Arthur. But I can see this card definitely getting play, just to allow additional consistency overall to deck building. And speaking of another card that provides consistency, I like this card more than Develop Your Brain. So basically the pro of this card is, let me read it. Visions of the Future, 2 cost, inkable action. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck, put 1 of them in your hand, and then the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. So pro for this card, it allows you to scry, look at the top 5, at the cost of 2 ink. So it adds an additional tier of consistency for Sapphire. And like worst case scenario, if you have all your puzzle pieces ready to go, it's an inkable card. You need cards to be inkable as you play the game. Otherwise, if you're not inking, you're not playing the game. So one thing, it was kind of hard for me to like kind of pinpoint like some constructive criticism for this, but if the top 5 cards of your deck are not immediately impactful when you use this effect, it feels like you just kind of wasted its effect. But top 5, like looking at the top 5 is fantastic, but if you whiff in the sense of like you don't find an answer to help you establish something, then like you're not providing immediate board presence that threatens anything. So there's that. Moving on to my other favorite card, I guess, for Sapphire. There's a lot of great Sapphire cards. So Cusco, the Selfish Emperor, 6 drop, inkable, 3/5, and quest for 2 says outplacement. When you play this character, you may put chosen item or location into player's inkable face down and exerted. And it also has the I call this a bonus effect because I don't really know how often this will happen. But by invite only, for the cost of 4 ink, your other characters gain resist +1 until the start of your next turn. So what I will say is that this is probably the best removal for Sapphire when it comes to items or locations, just because it instead of removing the threat to the discard pile, it gets put into the inkwell. And this just kind of feels great when the game state's already kind of like established, where like we're already at high ink, and those like high impactful cards that close the game, such as like Lucky Dime, you put it into your opponent's inkwell. Insane. And this card, it can also double as like a ramp tool. I don't know if people are considering that, but perhaps like you have some spare popsicles on board, and you can add that popsicle into your inkwell as a like a pseudo ramp for the next turn. Kind of cool. So this card is just great for the Sapphire mirror matches. And the only con I can think of is that it's a high cost character, but thankfully Sapphire ramps really quickly, so love to see that. Great card, love it. Now on to Steel, the last part of our section. We're gonna go ahead and talk about Kronk. He's a 7-drop uninkable 6/6 shift 5, and his ability says, are you on the list? During your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you may play a character with cost 5 or less for free. And as previous, anytime a card says you could do something for free, such as like like songs. Like, think of how great songs are. You play them for free. So the potential to play a character for free is a massive tempo like exchange. Like, it's great. I will say though that this is technically understated, mostly lacking in the lore department, but this is a pretty cool card, and it comes in the starter deck, so that's also really neat. One card I want to talk about, I was kind of like on the fence about this card, so here's a little caveat about it. So Tug of War, it's an action 5-cost inkable card, and it says choose one, deal 1 damage to each opposing character without evasive, or deal 3 damage to each opposing character with evasive. So pros, it's an inkable card that can spread damage or answer evasive characters. I do believe this card was primarily when you consider this card, its primary use will be for either like aggro style decks. It is a 5-cost card, so maybe not so much. I don't know, maybe, but I think it's more evasive focused. So a neat little action card. It's definitely going to be much more meta situational, and it's not a song. And when you have cards like Grab Your Sword, that's a 5-cost uninkable, but you could play it for free. I mean, it's pretty hard to I kind of rather do the 2 spread overall in most situations, but maybe there is a time where we can go ahead and we just need that additional damage across all the other evasives. And moving on to this Mickey Mouse, it's a 1-drop inkable 1/2, and it has resist +1, and I think this is potentially the best Mickey Mouse in the game, at least for if you plan on using like the shift Mickey Mouses. This is the best one, just because it will likely survive multiple turns, or your opponent will have to put a lot of resources into this Mickey Mouse. You don't even necessarily need to play it on a turn 1. I think you definitely drop it down on turn 2, and that way you can get even more secured like shift 3 Mickey Mouse. I will say that it is under average for stat line, but because it has resist 1, it's likely to survive. So I think this is a great card. And another card I like, I want to try to play it. It's a very interesting card, and I say that it's an interesting card because it seems to be very anti-Amethyst focused. And if Amethyst is a very heavy meta deck, and I mean it has been forever, right? So especially since set 2, I want to say set 1 it existed in Ruby Amethyst, but set 2 really kind of pushed it over to the color identity that it is now. But this is a floodgate that shuts off the Madamin bounce cards. Like, they can't use their rush to challenge, and it can also one-shot like Queen Castle. So I think that's pretty neat. I like it. I just don't know if I would play this card over others, just because it's not a shift target. And I don't know, 6-cost inkable. Like, would I play this over Tinkerbell? I don't know. I would have to play with this more, but having a Challenger 7, it's not something to ignore. And like, to basically shut off your opponent's ability to challenge my cards if they're 4-cost or less. Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Could be meta dependent. And let's talk about the best card in the set. I didn't do this on purpose. I always just do it by color order. And this is Pete, Game Referee, 3-cost, inkable card, 3/3 stat lines. It has the effect blow the whistle. When you play this character, opponents can't play actions until the start of your next turn. It's a lingering floodgate effect. So once you play this card, it doesn't even need to remain on the board. Its effect is an effect. It prevents all action cards. You can't sing, you can't play action cards. And this can be heavily abused with the bounce packages with Amethyst. For a con, I truthfully couldn't come up with anything. So please let me know what you guys have under consideration, like in the comment section below. I would love to hear as like a negative downside, but this card is great. I love it. And then on to the last part, my favorite part, of course, is the best enchanted rare of the set, in my personal opinion. Why? Because Steel Song is the best deck in the format, and I will not take constructive criticism with that. Steel Song is the best deck. Some cons, rip my wallet, because look at this card. It's meta viable and it's a great, love it. Another con, loses to Madame Medusa. What can I say? For context, I say that ironically, so you'll see me kind of saying that all the time. Anyways, that should be it for my video, but I just wanted to say thank you again. If you guys enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing for more videos. I got many more different ideas on the way, such as different deck builds and such, and deck theories, and a whole bunch of other projects. And join me on my Twitch at twitch.tv/gillygabyte, where I will be live streaming physical card games over Pixelborn Connect. So if you guys want to see me play some Lorcana live, and maybe we can go ahead and get some footage for my YouTube channel, I'll try to make some videos and such for that there. Please consider joining me. I will see you guys in the next video. I'm out of here.